Toretto! You're under arrest.
Arrest? I don't feel like I'm under arrest. How about you, Brian?
Nah, not a bit. Not even a little bit.
I'll just give it a minute. It'll sink in.
We didn't kill those feds. Those Reyes.
I don't give a shit. Just here to bring in two assholes whose names hit my desk.
Yeah. That sounds like a real hero.
Do you expect me to talk?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Welcome to episode 179 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm Becca, and as always, joined by my fellow co-drivers, Chris and Dave. How are you both?
Good evening, folks.
I'm alright, thank you. I haven't got a quippy pun this time round.
You haven't got any quippy quotes?
No, not really. I kind of let the side down.
Shocking.
I know, yeah.
But like Fruity Corner, and I got Chris's quippy quotes.
Yeah, I haven't done a fruity corner for a while.
That's fun to say.
I didn't recognise any fruit in this film.
There's no nutritional value in this series whatsoever.
You could mention Brazil nuts, I guess, but...
Okay, yeah, but what, just because they were in Brazil?
Yes.
They should do Cornwall have a pasty. Yeah.
Or classic cream.
Well, we could have monkey nuts when we do Planet of the Apes. I don't know.
Yeah, except apes and monkeys are not the same thing.
No, exactly. It'd be irrelevant.
It'll be bananas every time, won't it? Like...
Charlie's just held his phone against the wall, having heard you say that, probably.
Yeah.
You fucking idiot! You want me to record with you on this?
It's all. Kick me out, get Charlie, and quality goes up tenfold.
That's only.
No, obviously, I know they are different, so it's all good.
Yeah, it's only 2 or 3 series away now. Planet of the Apes. So yeah, that's coming.
And obviously, nuts not a fruit. So.
Yeah. Okay. And a peanut is a legume. Anyway.
Yes. So that's nutritional.
So now we've added value. Dear, lockdown's getting to us all.
Bloody hell! Right. Yeah. So tonight we are reviewing Fast and Furious 5, or as I like to call it, Fast 5. I'm shortening everything. Starring Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, Gal Gadot, Tyrese Gibson, Dwayne Johnson, Jordana Brewster, Ludacris, Sun Kang, and many more. Music by Brian Tyler, written by Chris Morgan, directed by Justin Lin, and released 2011. I had to check that for a minute.
Yes, about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that.
I can't remember when in the year it was released. I'm just looking now. Yeah, it was in April actually. So
yeah.
Yeah, the spring release.
They're often around April, May, but I was just checking. That was in the United States. It's possible for a couple of weeks later than that. It might have been May, but anyway, yeah, it was late on wide release. It was the end of April 2011. So, 2 other things to add. We've got the cinematographer back from Tokyo Drift.
That's why it looks so cool.
It looks great. And one of the editors, the lead editor, is a guy called Christian Wagner, who edits next week as well. But third listed editor is Fred Raskin. And I recognised that name, so I checked it, and Fred Raskin is the editor that replaced the late Sally Menke working with Quentin Tarantino.
Oh,
So no
okay.
wonder this film looks good.
Yeah. Some things you have to look up, some things you recognise. I mean, I knew Brian Tyler had an attachment to this series, but this score is very, very Brian Tyler. I would have known that, I think, anyway. I don't think I've realised till the last few months how instantly recognisable his stuff is.
It's one of those series where you hear the music and you actually know who it is.
Yeah, it's kind of very propulsive and sort of low horn sounds in it and stuff. It's kind of interesting, but yeah, go and listen to the Formula One theme, and that is exactly what Brian Tyler sounds like, basically. And that you do hear bits of it in this. Definitely, there's car chases in this where it's just got variants of that sort of type of thing. I can see why they picked him for that theme, to be honest. The other thing I think I pointed out is I keep saying that this is where the sort of format changes quite a bit. It hinted at it last week, but one of the other things about the format changes, it's gone over the 2-hour mark. It's 2 hours 10 minutes this week. It will be the same next week. Coincidentally, that's the same length exactly as Thunderball, which is the film I kind of likened it to.
Fun fact.
Not in style by any means, but in terms of this is what we want to be. And as much as sort of Goldfinger's seen as the quintessential Bond film in a lot of ways, there are things about the Bond series that didn't come till the following week, but there was very little that didn't come till after that. So for example, Thunderball's the first film that was shot in CinemaScope. It's the first one after Robert Brownjohn returns. Not Robert Brown. No, Maurice Binder, sorry. Robert Brownjohn did the second and third films. And sort of the recognisable credit sequence started with that film. There was just a few things about it,
But it is very similar, isn't it? Because like with Bond, obviously a lot of the tropes that we see in the Bond films were kind of obviously brought up in Goldfinger, but then obviously was cemented in Thunderball. And I think so the Fast Four, that was kind of like the first Fast and Furious movie as we've seen it so far, and then it was cemented by this film and carried on.
No format is ever completely complete in that.
No.
Bond films now don't look like Thunderball. I mean,
but you know what I mean, though.
But if you had to say, at which point are all the major things in place? It's Thunderball. And if you said to me, when is the modern Fast series like in place? It's here.
Yeah, it's this one totally.
Definitely. I've only seen it once before today because I saw it in that box set. And it was just such a relief because I hadn't really enjoyed the first four. I enjoyed 4 a lot more this time, actually, than I did the first time. But this is a brighter film. It's a sunnier film, but obviously partly because of where they are. We've suddenly got sort of Tyrese and Ludacris there as well at the same time. They find a way to give everybody something to do. So, Han is in most of the film rather than just a bit of it. And suddenly it's like, oh, here we go. And it's a proper sort of heist caper film. And really, with the exception of only 1 or 2 scenes, it doesn't really focus on street racing in the same way.
Yeah,
it's definitely more of a heist movie.
Yeah, I think this is like where as a series would say is in full gear. Like it's picked up last week where it kind of wants to go, and now it's in like full speed. And it's, as you say, this is kind of where the Fast franchise is known today. This is kind of where it is now.
Yeah, I mean, it gets a little bit soapier after this. I mean, it's a bit like I couldn't help but think of Joey Tribbiani because when she announces she's pregnant, there's something a bit TV novella about that, telenovela type thing. I thought it just made me think of it's twins and only one of them is mine. That's what I thought of. So it does go.
Yeah, like a character coming back after getting decapitated.
They're jizzing over their family bonds and all the rest of it. Yeah, brain transplant in the next film with Susan Sarandon. So yeah, it's definitely just got a little bit more in that way to go, if you like. But
I just completely sort of got what you meant as well, because particularly like what soaps do, where like you have like completely irredeemable villains suddenly turning like okay, doing like face turns, like we get later on.
And I think with some soaps as well, the speed of turnover of burn through plots and stuff means they kind of sort of have to pull things out of their ass. And the plot, it's not that it doesn't, I mean, it lands most of its themes this series, but there is an element of some of that stuff is a little bit busy work just to like have something going on and various interdynamics going on. But it's not laid on too heavily here. I mean, it's certainly, I mean, that was a joke example. She certainly doesn't have twins, and only one of them is Brian's. So
the other's Dom's.
No. the other one is Dom. How could you, Dom? We were brothers and lovers. I had a good laugh at some of that during this film. Did you see this at the time, folks, or what?
I saw it at the cinema. I think it was the first time I actually went to the cinema to see any Fast film. I can't remember if I saw Fast and Furious before I saw this, or it was something I revisited after seeing this. But it was like at a time I thought, oh yeah, you know what? I'm actually interested in seeing this. Actually, I don't know what it was. It just appealed a bit more, like a bit more action heavy. It looked a bit more fun, not just about, dude, where's my car? Gonna race you, bro. That kind of thing. It did seem like it had something in it more than that. It felt more like something like what it is. It's just a fun spectacle, really. And yeah, so that was the first time I saw it was in the cinema. It's the only time I saw it, actually. I've not revisited it till today.
Yeah, I know. I saw it in that box set, and like I say, it was a huge relief. And then I went straight on. I think I'd seen 6 a couple of times. I can't remember if I saw it again very soon afterwards. I can't remember. But I do remember thinking, oh, actually, this is even better than 6. Judging by general public opinion, I think this most often tops the list of the best Fast and Furious films. But when I say most often, it's far from unanimous. 6 and 7 gets in there on a few lists. I mean, you'll see the odd outlier where they like the first film best or something, but by and large, 5, 6, and 7 is like the peak of this series. I've seen 7 at the top of quite a few lists, and I've only seen 7 once, and my memories of it are compromised by the whole making of it and what happened to Paul Walker. So I'm looking for the seams all the way through it. And I thought maybe it was just a little step too far into the silly, but I'm quite willing to watch it again, and we'll see.
I think that's probably down to like the tribute to Paul Walker. I think that's kind of like.
Yeah, but I may watch it with very sort of. Well, I will watch it with fresh eyes this time because I always do. But even 6, there's a few plot diversions in it that I just think that needed tightening. That didn't need to be there. The sort of homoeroticism is dialed up even more. But I remember really liking 6, and if someone said they preferred 6 to this, I'd go, yeah, that's fair enough. I understand that as a preference. So my understanding is we're going into the best 3 weeks of the series now. Certainly, my memories of the last 2 films we're going to cover in this run are not anywhere near as strong. I think 8 was a bit of a mess. I thought the end of 7 was a bit of a mess, and we'll get there. But I certainly thought 8 was a mess, and I downright disliked Hobbs and Shaw. So we'll just have to see. But certainly we've sort of paid our dues to get here, and now we're at the good stuff.
So Becca, what do you make of it? Is this your first time watching Fast 5?
This doesn't sound very strange, but no, I think it's either this film or the next film. But it's probably like your first time seeing it at the cinema, for example. So I'm pretty sure I just ignored the first 4. But I think it's been involved in a massive safe, and I remember sort of thinking that's only going to work well on the big screen. But yeah, no, like Dave, definitely. I think here we've hit the sweet spot with this series of films. So like 5, 6, 7, well, certainly on an upward trajectory for sure. But yeah, no.
When you said a big safe would only work on the big screen, I'm just imagining sticking in the DVD and they're pulling along a little money box.
A little piggy bank. Here, the stunts get bigger and bigger, and obviously because there's this sort of genre of film is kind of known for being very CGI heavy, but whereas here in this series, I think this is going to sound really awful, but it's one of the best things going for it is that a lot of the effects are kind of done in camera, and there's very little CGI. I mean, like in this scene, like the chase scene with the train, for example, there's like 1 or 2 scenes where you can hardly tell. I
bet there's a ton of CGI, but it's subtle.
But yeah, no, there's loads, exactly, but it's done very well. So and it can completely fooled my eye anyway. But I just think it's it's this to the series' credit that it's not the kind of CGI heavy disasters that it really could have easily been. But yeah, as I say, this is my first time seeing the film in probably since release. But I had a good time with it, really enjoyed it. As I say, no nutritional value. Just check your brain at the door and enjoy, really. But I think I especially enjoyed the fact that how it's not all about the cars. I mean, there's a little bit of racing involved, and it's good to kind of see them kind of bounce off each other. But yeah, so all the heist element, the family element as well. And the fact that you've not got one villain but you've got 2, so there's double jeopardy, Mr. Bond. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It's a good action film, and yeah, things are looking up.
Yeah, I was I like I say, I mean, I've already sort of hinted where I'm going with it. So far, I would This is going to take some beating in this series. Becca's right on check your brain to some degree. But having said that, this is a reasonably smartly plotted film.
Oh,
it's,
yeah, no,
it's a
definitely.
cohesive, coherent script.
It all works together.
The only complaints I've ever heard about this film is it's too long, and I don't agree. I mean, the meat of the film's just over 2 hours, and that's fine for what's in it.
It does zip along. I found, like, despite the 2 hour plus long runtime, I didn't kind of feel it dragged at all. Personally, I didn't.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it moves at a rate of knots.
It does. I mean, it's not quite as tight as last week, but it's a far better film. But
yeah.
Although I'm not going to suddenly retcon what I said last week. I quite enjoyed last week. It was fine, but this is just that was a little bit. I guess the best way to put it is last week was a little bit. I can't believe people think this is really bad. It's all right. Whereas this, I'm flat out saying I really like.
Yeah. It's I mean there is like probably a reason you could say this is longer because you have a bigger scene this time and you got you introduced Roman and Taj and all that, so you got more characters, more interactions.
Yes, definitely, and it does. If you compare it to the closest film in style, which is probably the remade Ocean's 11, this is like a high octane version of it. Mm-hmm. It's one or two things it does better, and there's a handful of things it does worse. On the better side, it's very efficient at introducing the team.
Yeah.
There's a similar scene in Ocean's 11 where I think they're sat at the circus, and he's saying we need one of these and one of them, and he's naming like actors and sports stars and things like that as an idea of what they want, and it's almost like a little Easter egg that you can go and find out what that reference is referring to. But it takes quite a while to get them all together. I mean, it's fairly quick fire, and I do like Ocean's 11, but here it's really quick. What it does worse is that there's a whole narrative build-up to how they're going to do this, and at the last minute they've got to go fuck this and just go for the sort of smash and grab version.
Yeah.
But it's the first time we've seen a bait and switch since I think probably the second film. In the climactic action sequence, you're not seeing quite what you thought you were seeing. And the fun thing today for me was remembering that there was a switch.
Yeah.
Could I spot where it was? And I can. It's where Mia says you've got 10 clear seconds. And we're shown that at the end, but I did spot it at the time. So you're right to say check your brain to a degree, because they try and work out this intricate plot of how they're going to do it, and then they do, frankly, sort of abandon it. But they do give everyone something to do, even if it's fairly minor. Even in the climactic action sequence where you think you're missing a few of them, it turns out they were there doing bits and pieces. Mm-hmm. The interpersonal relationships are really good. You can see that they've done that little rejig on relationships now, and Tej and sort of Roman are going to be the comedy relief going forward. Han is suddenly, I never saw this in Tokyo Drift, but Han is suddenly cool as fuck.
He's always been cool. He's cool before it was cool.
He was cool before there was a word.
Yep. He is cool. Look it up in the dictionary, you'll see.
Although it did make me laugh when they said we need someone who can blend in, and then they call like a Far East Asian guy to South America.
I guess it's because he's just so laid back. He's very kind of mild-mannered.
I know, but it did make me smile. But yeah,
I did love those things. Like we need a mouth. Why?
Yeah, you haven't even laid out what the plan is yet. What I think they're saying is, when you look at Ocean's 11, I think Danny Ocean had already read up on how these things were like designed, and he's already gone right. I think he already knows his plan before he gets them all in. I think here, Dom knows the sort of people he might need, and I'm not quite sure he's worked the plan out. That's where the sort of disconnect to intelligence comes in, if you like. That Ocean's 11 is a much more smartly designed film than this in terms of its plot, but this is far from a stupid script. We've had more problems in the weeks before we've got here. Last week was reasonably well scripted. Next week has a bit of padding in it we don't need, and after that they get a bit big and over the top for me. But this is the sweet spot. This is as good as you're going to do with this type of series, and I think, I almost wish I'd been on board since sort of 2009 and had gone into this the first time knowing 4 well, You know what I mean, and things like that. But yeah, it's a good film. It stands alone really, really well. There's several bits I laughed at because of the general homoeroticism. And it's kind of funny, and we'll get to all of that. And there's a couple of bits of the plot that I just laughed at. But again, I think it's just that very slight hint of snob in me. I did reservedly, really, really deeply enjoy this.
So that's it, folks. Dave loves this film. Good night.
Yeah, Becca, what do you think? Well, what was your enjoyment?
I can't really follow that. I think he's spoken for us all. Sadly, I haven't really given it much thought. I'm trying to kind of do the deep dive, but I'm like, I haven't gone much beyond the surface. No, as I say, it's in terms of, it is compared with Inception, it is one of those films where you do have to. These Fast and Furious series. I mean, it is very tightly plotted. I'm not saying, just it is a, typical dumb action film. It does go beyond that. I think, especially considering from last week, it is, very tightly plotted, and there's lots of kind of A plots and B plots and C plots and D plots, weaving their way through. I'm just saying it was just a, typical dumb action movie because it's not. But it is kind of one of those, compared to. Oh, no, again, to the realms of like highbrow and lowbrow cinema, which I won't go into.
No, this is playing to a mixed ability group. This is not going to confuse the stupid. Put it that way.
No, exactly. So, but that's what I mean. I'm not. I don't mean to do it a disservice like that. I mean, but at the same time, it's not, going to test you too much either. But it is, it's very clever in what they do. And I'm a big sucker for kind of in-camera effects as well. I mean, obviously, clever CGI is amazing. But when you notice CGI when it's obvious, that does kind of pull it. Especially in modern cinema today. Sorry, I had a thing land on my elbow. So when it's done well, and when it's done very cleanly, I'm easily impressed by that. So I was really, impressed by these massive stunts. And obviously now, we have to kind of like each film has to outdo the next one on the level of sheer awesomeness. I had a really good time. This trilogy, this was, this kind of series of 3 films within the franchise so far, I'm definitely looking forward to.
I think that's the only thing I forgot to say, actually, and that's something you've just hinted at. We're still at the stage in this series where topping what you've done before doesn't mean outrageously stupid. It just means like a little bit inventive. By the time you get into I quite liked it in 8 where they had the automated cars, but they are running out of stuff. By the time you get to 7, they're parachuting in the cars.
It'll be Transformers next.
It is getting to the point that, that joke about, Fast and Furious in space. Now,
it will get like that one day.
Everything is as in execution because I think the Tom Cruise space product is probably Mission Impossible 8, I suspect. And if you ask me, can McHugh and Cruise pull it off? Yeah, probably. But the Bond series went into space, and it was like, really? What are you doing that for? So, at the moment, they're still top. They've still got room to outdo themselves. Whereas now, when they start a film going, how can we top what we did before? And it's like, well, I don't know, fucking orgy on top of a fucking Evel Knievel's bike. It's like they are running out of space to do that. So that's another reason this is kind of in the sweet spot.
Mm. It's before things get a bit too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think 7 is kind of the tipping point. But we'll get there. I might feel differently about it this time, and certainly anyone who's listening who's a fan of 7, I don't think I'm going to insult your tastes when I get to it. It's just my memories of it were that okay, you're trying to top the last film, aren't you? And of course, with that film, a new director had come in as well, so I think he was trying to put his stamp on it as well. And
there's all kind of factors going on.
Well, this will speak to my broader film taste, to be honest, but fucking James Wan ain't no Justin Lin. Not for me. Although I'm aware he's got quite a fan base. But he was very hamstrung in what he did, but we'll get there. Anyway, Chris, sorry.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this one. I think it is probably justifiably the best in the series. Just in terms of it's just got everything. I said before, it moves.
I mean, our only doubt is open mind, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've all seen them all, and I can say now quite confidently it's the best. But I'm not going to watch next week's film with that in my head.
Yeah, indeed. But it moves at a rate of knots. it never feels boring at all. You have this kind of, the first time that the series starts to sort of like just bulk up its star power. You have like The Rock introduced in this one, and and he offers like a level of should we say homoerotic gravitas. Because The Rock is magnetic. He is very. He's a great screen presence, The Rock, and he really is. And he really is. And I think out of for now, for what I remember, and after watching this one, I think this is probably the best of Hobbs first time round, because I do like the idea of this like just no nonsense kind of like military-esque sort of DA guy.
And he's good. He's smart. He's not just muscle.
Yeah, I mean,
he's got a brain.
Well, yeah, and there's like, there's a little bit of point to him, in terms of like him as a, he's no nonsense, but he's very much straight down line. It's like, no, they're criminals. I'm going to bring him in. Absolutely, don't care. There's no grey. There's black and white. And this film, he kind of like learns, well, there is a bit of grey. There's not like
I'm not sure I found that super plausible at the end, but
no, but you
but
you can kind of say, okay, well, I think there's he lives by a code, from like working with law enforcement.
His code generally marries up to the letter and spirit of the law.
Yeah.
But
and
circumstances changed where his code didn't quite match.
Yeah, exactly.
To what happened.
Yeah.
Or didn't match that situation.
Yeah,
all right.
It kind of like finds like, well, Dom and his crew, yes, they're criminals. They do also have a code. They're not just we're just all out evil kind of thing. There is
mixed bag on the women in this, because I thought Mia was better served than any film so far she's been in. Well, that's only two previous
It's like
films.
the best served film she's been in this film. Definitely.
Yeah, she's actually pretty well served in this comparatively. But there's two places I laughed about the depiction of women, and not in a good way. I laughed because what are you going to do? I'm not going to cry about it, am I? But it were a couple of bits where I thought, oh, fucking hell, that's really funny. But we'll get to that. But by and large,
is it the Gal Gadot and getting the handprint? Or is that all?
No.
Okay.
No. That was a bit... Yeah, I take your point.
Yeah, I did sort of roll my eyes at that scene, but I thought, she's going to use whatever she has at her disposal.
Use what you've got.
Yeah.
Bonds does the same. He seduces millions of women.
Does he?
Well, not millions, but you know what I mean.
Fucking hell, where are these alternate cuts where he's knobbing loads?
Not millions, but a few.
There's only one love that means anything to him. Well, two, and it's Brian and Luke.
Tracy and no.
Anyway, yeah, we're going to be very, very positive about this film, I think. Shall we discuss this film sequentially?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is just how I'm actually quite impressed just how well the actual when the team do arrive, how well it all just matches up. Considering that it is just, we'll just grab everyone else from all the other films. So you got like even like Fast 2, which I think they just politely ignore. They're like, no, we're going to bring like Roman and Taj, and then we'll bring.
I had an existential crisis on that because Brian was Kelvin Universe Brian in Too Fast and Furious. But it was the first appearance of the other two. So were they Prime? And now this is the Kelvin Universe version of them. I thought about that when Roman was in that place like bullshit in the guy behind the counter.
Yeah.
I thought, is this Kelvin or Prime? Prime, I suppose you wouldn't swap universes, but I don't know. Anyway, yeah, no, they all fit really well, and they're kind of almost in their final configuration. We will add people, and we will lose people, like Gina Carano's in next week's film. We've got that lady with the exact same skill set as Tej, who joins in the 7th, I think it is. We've got a bad guy who turns good later. But by and large, this is the nucleus of the main team. We lose the two after the first scene. Or do we? Or do they come back?
Then we
No,
get another
sorry, they're
character
not
who
in
comes
6.
back from the dead.
No, because he was alive last week. If you're on about Han.
No.
Who are you on about?
Well, not really back from the dead, but Letty, kind of ish.
Yeah. We'll get
Spoiler
to that.
alert.
Well, anyone who's seen any of the series,
Yeah, we'll know.
probably. Yeah, we find out it is well, they described it as a mid-credit sequence, but it's literally as it starts. So you wouldn't have got out of the cinema before seeing it, so you won't have missed it. At the very end of the film, we find out.
I think I did, first time round when I saw
You must have fucking. What did you do? Sprint?
Oh yeah, when the credits go up, I go, that's it. I'm done. And then then this trend of of films always having like a end of credits thing just came out, and it's like, oh fucking hell, do I have to wait here now or?
I've missed one in this series, but no, I this popped up before I could do anything about it. To be honest with you, I mean, obviously I knew Letty was alive because the first film I saw was 6, and the films are now linking into each other, which adds to the slight soap operatic feel, but it also does make it like a cohesive collection now. 4 runs
Yeah, we
into
could
5.
just cement the
runs into
series,
6.
isn't it? I think.
Yeah, well, I think 6 runs into 7. I can't really remember now, but certainly 4, 5, and 6 run together. And there are carry-ons, and I mean, there's a couple of ludicrous things in a couple of weeks' time when we get to. Well, for those who haven't seen it, we're going to get sort of a baby parentage issue in about 3 weeks' time, where you just go, that doesn't work in the timeline. When was that person ever pregnant? But there we go. We'll get to it. As for this film sequentially, we start with the final scene of Fast 4.
Yeah, so basically where they're driving up to the prison bus, essentially, and I like the way of getting Dom out by crashing.
I think it's quite ballsy to kill him in a massive coach crash and end the film at 1 minute and 59 seconds.
But it's just how they do it. Just basically just took Brian just braking his car a bit and then just slamming the brakes and hitting and rear-ending the bus, and he just flips over like a.
Well, what happened is Mia, who's driving one of the cars, sprints ahead of this coach, turns the car around, races down the opposite side of the road, and at the last minute turns onto the. Well, not at the last minute, late enough that the coach can see it and avoid it, but not with plenty of time to correct yourself. It veers into the lane of the coach. The coach then veers out, is rocking slightly, and as it veers back, he brakes the car. So that not only is the coach not head on, it's off at an angle, but it's unweighted as well. So it's quite clever in that regard. But the number of flips, I'm thinking, what? And they're all right in that coach, are they? And it's like, how do they get him out? What about the other criminals? Is there no one on the coach that's equally as miraculously unharmed, who's guarding them and armed?
I was half expecting to show just Dom just like single-handedly just walk out on his own, no one else, just dust himself off, go like, what took you so long?
I'm glad we didn't do that. But it was just like, the scale of this accident, there's a few in the first 5 minutes of this film where you think, well, that would kill you. You would certainly be, at very least, hospitalised.
Yeah.
Yes, at very least. It's an incredible accident. We don't see the aftermath, but we just know. We go to like a news montage now, don't we? Of different networks.
Yeah, just to basically sort of like saying, like, basically filling in stuff you already know, like, he Toretto escaped, no accomplices, Brian O'Connor and whoever, and then you basically see Brian and Rio arrive at Rio de Janeiro. And
immediately the film's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's got a lovely colour palette to it. I mean, part of that's made easy by where they are, but it is a very, very attractive film, this. And they meet up with Vince, who was in the first film and a bit of an antagonist in the first film. He was one of Dom's crew, but he fell out over Mia, really. He was the one that got his arm stuck in the action sequence at the end of the film.
I know he noticed today, but he had, like, they actually still... the details that he actually had scars around his arm.
I didn't notice.
Yeah, he actually sort of like lots of like sort of cuts around the side of us where the wire was.
Right. Okay. No, I didn't notice that.
Well spotted.
But I think my eyes were going everywhere during this scene because there was just, the favelas have got so much like going on, so much detail, but yeah, they've turned up there because they're now on the run, and they've got no money, so they're immediately given word of a job to steal cars from a train. And I'd sort of conflated the first two action sequences of this film. I couldn't remember it started with them springing Dom. I thought it started with this sequence and Dom finds them.
Yeah.
Obviously, I knew different by the time we got here this week. But when I saw the start of 5 last week, and I did the same this week actually. I watched the start of 6, but literally just the start. There's something about these that I am wanting to go forward with them. Yeah. So as they go off to start doing this job, Vince is outside and the car pulls up. Now it's meant to be a surprise in a couple of minutes when Dom turns up on that train, but that was obvious from the car to me. That was Dom.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be anyone else, though, is it? I mean,
no, not in that design of car. But
it's like, it's like, well, even though dialogue before was like, oh, where's Dom? Oh, well, still waiting for him. So it's like, and then he turns up. It's like, oh well.
Yeah, but it's just the reveal when you see him walk out of the sunlight on the train, pulling his like "I'm really hard" look as well, which is what he does.
Yeah.
So what have they got to do?
As his look normally, that's just how he normally looks.
Yeah. What have they got to do? They've got to steal 3 cars from a freight carriage on a train.
Yeah.
That's a mixture of freight and passengers. Few things about this sequence reminded me of Skyfall, and one of them was the train not stopping when all this is happening. And even when the truck is on fire and like tips the train a bit later on, they still just carry on like everything's all right. Do you remember that at the start of Skyfall where they ripped the whole back of the train off and the passengers just sat there like,
just have to go.
Right?
Well, they got a schedule to
This
keep.
is fine. Really nice.
Got a tight schedule. They can't stop for anything like that.
Suits his cuffs.
The only other thing is I've kind of overthought this. We're going to find out that what they're trying to do here is a bit of a red herring for picking up one car, which is a Ford GT40 or whatever they're called. And it's got a chip in it that has all of the details of the main antagonists of the films, business empire, illegal business empire, and the location of all his money, which is explained quite efficiently by a gal later. And I think he was going to buy that chip, but who had that chip? Why was it in the car? Was it going to be used to blackmail him? I'm a bit confused as to how this whole situation's arisen. Full stop.
What do you mean, like how the car got in the train in the first place, kind of thing?
Why is it in there? Why is there a chip in it? Why is he buying that chip? Was someone going to blackmail with it?
I think because it was under, was it like obviously DA, wasn't it? And I think what happened is.
Do you think that's one of his cars in the first place?
Yeah, I think it was something that he stored there to keep safe or something along those lines, and it happened to be in DA, and he just basically they want it back.
It's not that it's implausible. It's not that we've been told something that doesn't make sense. It's that we haven't been told.
Yeah.
And you could look at it and go,
don't matter.
How the hell did that work? Right, that's a plausible enough explanation, so fair enough. So Mia and Brian are sat on the train, and they're talking about finding somewhere where there's no extradition. And then they get the nod that it's time to go through and basically start stealing. So what they're going to do, cut a hole in the side of the train, hoist these cars out onto a truck and then back them off them.
Yeah.
Like a low loader, like a transporter type thing. Okay. And it becomes very clear immediately that one of the guys they're working with, who I like to call Latino Goldie.
Is it a bit like that?
Yeah. Latino Goldie, because I can't remember his real name, and he looks like Goldie in a wig with a bit of fake tan on. And not gold teeth.
What, Mr. Bullion?
Yeah, from Bullion.
He does, facially. He look, like when you watch Top Gear and they say it's the Stig's African cousin, and a guy will walk out and it's the Stig, but he's wearing like something out of tight fit. Well, it's like that. It's like Goldie's Latino cousin.
I mean, can we just pause for a sec? I mean, and just think, why did they think it was a good idea to cast Goldie as a henchman in a Bond film?
I don't
Because he
know.
blends into a crowd, Chris.
I mean, can you imagine them doing that shit today? Like getting like, I don't know. Like,
Probably wouldn't do it today. He'd be like, nah. No thanks.
can you imagine like sort of like them casting Dappy or something like that is.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, they still stunt cast, but their stunt casting's got better. It's just lazy. It's just as lazy. Who won an Oscar 2 years ago in the supporting actor role? So we can, But yeah, they've stopped that business. Yeah, definitely. I can't imagine just who's hot right now as a henchman particularly, but unless somebody who's not really from the acting community in the same way. But yeah, his Latino cousin is only interested in the Ford, and it's because of this chip. And when they pull, it's very good timing on the camera work, because as they rip the side of that off, they've all got a duck, and they actually do that with split-second timing. And Dom walks in. Dom is part of the job as well.
Yeah.
And it becomes a bit of a fight, because he realises they only want the Ford, so he thinks something's up here. And so he puts Mia in it. And, of course, he says, change of plan, meet up later, basically. And so she doesn't go where they think she's supposed to go. And so they immediately smell a rat. It becomes a fight.
How they know that, I don't know, because they're in the middle of a fucking desert somewhere. Like, so she's, like, driving off in the other direction. And
maybe, it's possible, I suppose, that they were supposed to stay with alongside the transporter and then head off together in formation. That's the way I read it. She got in. She immediately legs it, and I would imagine that's not the plan. But this is a really well done sequence. It was a sequence when 2 or 3 years on from having seen any Fast and Furious films, this was like the sequence I thought of first.
Yeah, because it's quite a solid action scene. It's quite fast paced and
it's tense, and it's got a variant on the ticking clock.
And we're only 10 minutes in the film.
And this is our second major action sequence, even though one is just a replay of the last film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it ends up with Brian on the truck fighting some guy with fuel leaking and a fire starting. Dom fighting the other guy. And the key thing that happens here is there's some DEA agents there, and Latino Goldie shoots him.
Yeah.
So shoots them, which they later say will push them up the most wanted list, because they will assume that's Dom and Brian.
Yeah.
So that's directly why The Rock is sent to Rio to chase them. But yeah, I thought the other thing that made me think of Skyfall was how far. I mean, first off, he's died in the coach crash, and having miraculously been revived after that, they now fall far enough that you would die, I think.
Yeah.
But there you go.
But, it's okay, because they kind of, jumped off a flying car, so...
Yeah, it was all right. And again, it's just the way the action's designed always just sells the trust between them perfectly. Brian knows Dom's got him. Do you know what I mean? And, of course, they have to keep driving because the truck on fire is bouncing after them. So it's really well choreographed. You've got to give credit to Justin Lin for his work here.
Oh, sure, of course.
But again, it's whipping along, because immediately now they're captured for about a minute.
Yeah, so they're captured just so we could be introduced to, the bad guy.
Yeah. I recognise this actor. Tell me about this actor.
He was in Desperado. He was a bad guy in Desperado.
Of course he was.
He's played bad guys in other stuff before.
I think so, yeah, he was kind of doing this film. We kind of thought, oh, is he going to be a bit stereotyped, pigeonholed? But nope.
Yeah. No, I'm just looking. I've seen him in quite a few things. He was one of the Salazars in 24.
Yes.
That was season 3 by the look of it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the one with that really quality actor, Chase, the guy who played Chase, the one that was all right, says The Guardian. That was that series. Okay, yeah, I've seen him in a few things. He's certainly very, very recognisable. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he usually plays bad guys in kind of action films. He was in Clear and Present Danger as well. He was like the main bad guy in that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, he's born to do that. Really, he's born to be some drug trafficker or something.
Yeah.
In these films. Okay, so they're going to be interrogated about the car and all the rest of it, and they manage to escape. Do we want to say any more than that?
Yeah, it was just pretty much like he's just a bad guy.
Have we already met him? We do meet him where he's talking to business associates and talking about how Brazil became Portuguese.
Yeah.
He was talking about how the Spanish sort of came in as conquerors, because obviously a lot of South America is Spanish-speaking, and he was saying that the Spanish sort of tried to fight their way in, whereas the Portuguese came in and flattered us and gave us things.
Yeah.
And hence we're now Portuguese. And he said that's very much his idea, that he's got people in the favelas because he's been generous to them. Which is an immediate worry that we're going to know where these guys are, because that's where Dom is. Okay.
So I think we have that. Then we sort of see him talk to like Dom O'Brien while they're chained up, and they both escape. So they go back. They go back to the hideout or whatever. Sort of say that they are going to be back. Going to basically be looking for him.
Yeah, the first thing is, that's the conversation about we've just gone up the most wanted list.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to send their best. So
and
again,
they figure out
very basic plotting 101 that we've been introduced that the guy that's going to come to get them is exceptionally good.
Mm-hmm.
And Vince is immediately... Brian smells a rat instantly. Vince defends himself. Dom believes Vince for now, but he keeps an eye on him. And we see Vince remove the chip from the car. So we know that he was in on this as a separate sale to Reyes.
Yeah.
So Vince is kicked out, basically, at this stage. How are you with all this, Becca, so far?
Yeah, definitely. Loving it all the way, for sure. It zips along at a pace, at a rate of knots, but it gives you time. Like, all the character beats are still there, so even though it does whip along, you're kind of not left behind. Although the bit with the chip in the car, I was a little bit like, huh? But apart from that, all the kind of character beats, beats are there. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're immediately, we can just feel the relationships that are there, and obviously we'll go a bit further with that as the film goes on. I think the next thing is Luke Hobbs arriving.
Yeah, the baby oil turns up.
He sweats his way through this film.
Yeah,
I mean, I mentioned previously there's that video of literally him, and all you can hear is like squeaky time.
Yeah, he turns up.
But he looks really good. I mean, he is the business. I mean, you kind of really don't want to mess. You don't want to cross wires with this guy, but he does. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because he's so stacked. But literally, he just sweats his way through this film.
But how efficient?
I couldn't believe it.
How efficient is the character work?
Oh,
he comes off the plane. It's immediately, I need this, 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 and this.
Yeah, bang, bang,
and
he knows
I
what
want
he's
this person, and I need you to stay out of my way. The person he picks, when we next see him, the very next time we see him, she asks why he picked her. And he tells her exactly why, and it tells you his attention to detail. Exactly. And we also get they're just names that come our way, and we just go and get them. That's all I care about. All of that is communicated in about its first 4 minutes of screen time.
Yeah, it's very efficient, isn't it? It's literally kind of show, don't tell, and that's the best, excuse or basic example of it.
I even like little sort of like quirks in the dialogue, like I like my dessert first.
Yeah. Do you want good or bad news? Yeah. In other words, give me the good news first.
Yeah. He's like, I want dessert first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I can't remember where exactly we go from that.
Okay. So we have, basically, Vince has come back. We sort of it's zipping along because we basically go through like Rain's. Was in the scene basically like they find out where they are. And then, and Hobbs is like inspecting the train. It's where everyone comes in.
they find him. They manage to use software that can sort of reconstruct faces from beneath disguises, and so hence they find where they find that it's like Dom and all that lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay. So they head to the favela to arrest them, but Reyes' guys turn up at the same time.
Yes. This is like the same time when they're just sort of like, you know, looking at the chip, and they find out it's like schedule of shipments.
Yeah, and that's really efficiently explained by Gal in a bit. Just as a throwaway remark, it's fairly well explained here, but if you don't get it, in one sentence she explains it later. She says, "What is it? If it isn't, what is it? She says something like, if it's cash, it will be cash houses.
Yeah.
Or if it's not in accounts, it will be cash houses." And so basically, Brian has already explained that they weigh money when it's in that sort of size because they don't want to have to count it. And he tells you that weight is equivalent to $10 million because 49 kilos of money is in one place. And there's 10 of them around the city. So there's $100 million around the city. Maybe 110 because they burn 10, don't they? But yeah. And they go to... Basically, they go to one location, show their faces, burn the money, and what they're trying to prompt them to do is move it to one location.
Yeah, but that's
because it clearly know where it is.
But that's a bit further on. So,
Okay.
But yeah, Hobbs is so like Hobb. Basically, everyone's there to get him, and there's a big bit of a shootout. You know, they get away. And I just love like the henchman of it, because like I'm surprised how he's still alive throughout the movie, because every time he goes to sort of like get Dom and the crew, he fucks up and probably comes out on his own. I'm just thinking like, how fucking incompetent are you?
Yeah, he's in the middle of a firefight, and then at the end everyone's dead, and he's just stood there going, "Door."
and you see like the main bad guy sort of like kill someone for insubordinate or being like incompetent, and you just think, how are you still here? Like,
yeah, what's going on?
Yeah,
one job.
That's the thing. So the guy that the
like
guy
literally every time he goes to do something, he fucks up or he fails.
Yeah, he literally the bad guy literally brained the guy that was there when Vin burnt the money. So yeah, literally just grabbed the heaviest thing in his office and just smashed his head in with it. So yeah, but this guy keeps going back and going, "Oh, sorry."
So, yeah, you ever come back going like, they got away?
Never mind.
But you actually had him in the truck, yeah. You know,
It's okay.
So they get away. Dom, Mia, and I nearly said Letty and Brian.
Yeah,
I was thinking of Brian's, the big love of Dom's life, and I thought that's Brian in it. They meet up, and there's something about the way they hug each other that I find kind of sweet. It is kind of, he wants them to split up because they're going to be searched, him being Dom, and she announces she's pregnant. And only half the baby is Brian's.
Yeah, this is hinted at before, because Vince's wife sort of says,
well,
does he know?
She's a bit sick as well, isn't she? But this is the first time she said it out loud, and Brian's learning for the first time. And then Vin has to watch the two of them kiss, which must be like a dagger through his heart. And they decide they're going to stay together. Because just the whole loyalty family thing, which is starting to be ramped up now. So now the only thing they realise is, well, the other option is to steal this money. But we need a team.
Yeah.
Right. Call up IMDb, who's been in the other ones of these. They'd say.
Yeah. So we need a chameleon. Han. Okay.
Right.
We need a fast talker. Which you kind of think, like, talk his way out of stuff. Like, okay, fine, Roman.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's how he is all the way through the rest of the series.
Someone who's good with circuits. The tech guy, or Taj.
So you need basically the computer programmer. The equivalent in Ocean's 11 was the one that gets lost in that corridor and hooks into the cameras. So yeah, that's Tej because they want to bring back Ludacris. because that's not how Tej was in the second film. But they've just grafted this
They
skill
tweaked
set
him
onto it.
slightly, haven't they?
Yeah, no, I mean he plays much the same as a screen presence, and the fact that he didn't do it in the second film doesn't mean he couldn't have. But obviously, it is like, who do we think would play nice together? Okay, well, what's Tej's role going to be in this? Right, he's our computer guy. He was running street races before, but he's now their computer guy and quality mechanic.
Yeah, I think it's probably the mechanic angle that he kind of like. Yeah, he's probably knows his stuff.
What else do they?
They want someone who will bust through walls. You don't even sort of like see. You just see like the Puerto Rican guys sort of like walking away with the backs to the camera.
And then someone who's willing to go the extra mile, and you see a bike, and that's Gal. So
yeah,
is that it? Have we covered everybody?
Yeah, that's the team. So they all.
So we've got Tej, Roman, Giselle, Han. The two I can never think of the names of, the two foreign speakers who were never in it after this film.
No, they're kind of more like not comic relief almost, but kind of a little bit, provide a little bit of light relief, shall we say?
Yeah, which you don't.
And they're always arguing, always fighting.
They must be reassessing all the time. And once you see Tej and Roman together in this film, you must think we don't need those two.
Yeah, I think it's very odd because now we've got Tej and Roman back. You don't kind of need another set of these sort of characters, but again, it's just a bit of light relief, and it kind of just fleshes out the team more, really, doesn't it? I think.
I'm all for. I agree. I'm all for loyalty, and the whole "we'll do anything for each other" things. But they turn up, right? Largely as wanted men as well. They turn up, and then are told what the job is. They've flown halfway across the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was a bit like, so what we here for? And it's like, what? He didn't say at all?
I don't know. Maybe
you want
it's
us to
just
steal 100 million? Oh, right. Could have been anything. Hey, the photos have been developed from our last holiday. I just thought I'd bring you here for the snaps.
Yes, let's watch this carousel.
Yeah. I just thought the weather was lovely here. I thought you'd like it.
It was nice and sunny, very hot.
So no, they've got to basically sign the rest of their lives away to join in the events of this film. But they're in anyway. And then we go into sort of, so then we're well into the second act now, which is all about the sort of planning, isn't it? Good stuff.
Yeah, so they're basically sort of like, this is where they say they're talking about like, the stuff about the money and what they do. So there's so basically got like money scattered all around the city. So it says like, well, how are we going to do? As soon as we do one, the security's going to go up. And he's sort of like, well, exactly. So they basically sort of rob one place, but instead of doing that, just like burn the money with the idea that they're all going to sort of put it in one big secure location.
Yes. Makes sense, because they know that chip's gone, and they know the location of all of them. You can't just move one, or you can't swap them with each other, because 10 million is 10 million. So that bit of the plot actually makes sense. And they start breaking down what they need to do, don't they? So first off, it's tracking all of the money. So they go to different locations. Different people are different members of the crew are tracking it in different ways. Tej is up on like a very high-rise building, watching down on them. Gal's following another lot on a bike. Dom and Brian are both in cars following them. That sort of thing, isn't it? And then it turns up they're going to the most secure bank in the city.
Yeah, the police.
Yeah. Well, the most secure vault. Sorry,
Military police.
I meant vault, not bank. Sorry, yes. But yes, the police. Which is just... and they're immediately like, well, that's that then.
Got the work cut out for them.
They're not keen on this as an
No.
idea. So,
But obviously Dom's not phased because he's like, well, nothing's changed, nothing's over till it's over.
So the first thing they do. Well, they get a map of the plans of the building, and they need to know what cameras are in there. So they send in the two Spanish guys to. Well, basically, they arrange an explosion in the toilets so they can shut the toilets off, pose as workmen, and get into the sort of camera circuits that are behind the wall, because they've got plans of the building, and they know that they need to know where the cameras are, what the layout of the building is so they can replicate it in their little sort of wherever it is they're staying. It's almost like a disused car park they're in. And they need to get into the vault to find out what make and model it is. So they go in and do that. Roman goes in and fast talks to drop off evidence, so to speak, which they'll take into the room, and it's a remote controlled car with a camera on it, which Tej then operates. Tej is going to have to break into the thing. Part of the security is numbers and all the rest of it, which he'll have to crack. The other bit is a handprint, which Giselle and Han go to get, don't they?
Yeah.
By getting herself touched up, basically.
And Brian and Dom go to get some cars because of the cameras. They have to sort of like try and.
That's the thing, yeah. So they immediately go off to a street race, don't they, to start with? Now, this is the bit. This is like they visited the set of the first film.
Yeah.
Because the first thing we see is slow motion women's asses swaying. This was a bit like, oh come on, you've grown past this, surely. I mean, I love women's asses as it goes, but like it was just a bit like, yeah, put in a few more hard yards with the female characters of your film before you go back to this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I can hardly say I was offended by it, but I did kind of like laugh out loud because I'd forgotten it. I thought, oh, we're back in Zion.
I mean, we do have like you do have better with the female characters this time around because you do have like Elena as well.
Much better, yeah. But it is better. I mean, I say there were two places I laughed at the depiction of women. This is one of them. And every street race they ever enter, they win easily. We don't even see the race; they just win cars. And they keep every time you see this driving sequence that we're about to go to, it's a different car. So they have to keep going out and winning cars. And none of them are doing the job. And we get a montage of they've got a 10-second window to beat 3 cameras, is it?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a tight turn and a hairpin. And they all have a go, and they all have a go in different cars. Starts off with Brian, because he's considered, I don't know if he's considered the best of them. Him and Dom are considered the best of them. But you see all of them in the cars at one stage, and none of them can do it. So they said, we need an invisible car, so they steal police cars instead, because no one's surprised to see police cars. So that's it for kind of the plotting, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're basically going to drive in, try to avoid the cameras, bust the safe, steal the money. That's the original plan.
Mm-hmm. Also, you have they find out that the DA tracking him is Hobbs, so they decide to confront him to a bit. So they obviously know their part, the street racing scene, so they all have their back.
Yeah, he's being partnered. The one he asked for is Mrs. Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
And
looking rather dishy, actually, I must say.
She's from the area. Well, if you're into uniforms, you got it, because she's walking around in kind of a fairly low-cut police top all the way through. But she's there's some sexual tension between her and Dom. When they're running away in the favela earlier in the film, they have a moment, don't they? And she gets hold of the sort of cross and chain, which is the sort of symbol of him and Letty's relationship. And that will come back later in the film and next week and in later films, actually. But the beginnings of it is here. There's some sexual tension between the two. And there's sexual tension very early on between Han and Giselle as well.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey. She's like, yeah.
Yeah, they also like sort of point out that she was ex-military for Mossad as well. Which was what Gal
Giselle,
Gadot was.
Gal Gadot was. Well, because the national service is a thing over there, so she had to do 2 years. So, yeah, she did 2 years in the Israeli army. Because they have to. It's as simple as that. It's part of being a citizen over there, I believe. What from then? I think we go straight
Taj puts a tracker on Hobbs as well. Dom goes back to get his necklace.
Yeah.
Which gives a bit of a romantic tension between the two.
Yeah. He's got romantic tension with almost everybody, though.
Yes.
Sexual tension all over the place.
He is just a walking sex panther in this film, Mr. Diesel.
That's a great name.
Yes,
Sex.
Stings the nostrils.
he is. He's a love albatross.
But there was a bit of awkward with like when Roman came on. It's just like, yeah, I've heard about you.
Yeah,
because
so,
obviously, doesn't want to doesn't like meeting Brian's former exes.
I know, it's like, yeah, you were doing my dude, weren't you?
Keeping him warm for me.
I'm gonna go and do this music guy over here. And then I'm going to overcompensate for the rest of the series by cracking on to every woman I ever meet.
So yeah,
I was about to say these films would be very different if I wrote them, but actually they wouldn't be. They'd just be a bit more graphic. Because it's hardly subtext yet at the moment, is it?
The subtext becomes text.
Yes,
it really does.
So.
That were a right good shag love.
Ooh, it's going to be hard to sit down for a few days. Ooh.
Fantastic work with the penis.
You really handled my throttle.
Yeah. Right, yes. So what next?
Yeah, so they grab police cars,
which we think doesn't become a thing, and it does. So even where they're forced to change their plan late, it's still not necessarily a thing. So Reyes knows. Reyes is after them.
Mia's at a market, and then obviously the men
Vince
show
turns up. Yeah, Vince spots it before Mia, and the audience spots it. She's about to be captured by Reyes' men. Vince saves them, so he's cutting on the deal, which would have been 11 million each. So add another one, it's like 10 million each or whatever.
So do you think this was...
the race over the police cars. I forgot that bit as well.
Yeah.
That was cheesily quite nice. Because I've seen the film before, but I'd forgotten so much about it. And the moment they bet $1 million... I thought Dom's going to throw this as like a family present to Brian because he's becoming a dad, and that's exactly what happens. Although Dom won't admit it. So yeah, they have a little drag race for $1 million of each other's money, which they haven't got yet, but they will have. So it's Tej, Roman, Brian, and Dom. Brian wins at the last second over Dom. But they always pull the punches on who's the best driver. When we get to 8, I think we'll talk a little bit about sort of the contractual and behind the scenes stuff on this series, because I think they've all got massive egos that don't want to get beaten, and we see a hint of it when, because in a minute Luke's going to turn up to arrest Dom, and the fight. I just remember thinking, well, there's their contractually obliged, almost indistinguishable in talent fight.
And they kiss at the end.
I mean,
where it's like, well, let's call it a draw, kind of.
I mean, I'm only surprised Dom was sort of on top at the very, very end. They must have argued over that, because I actually thought it was going to end with them literally lying next to each other, because neither would admit the other having the open hand. But you look at how the fight sways back and forth.
Yeah.
And we hear that Vin Diesel contractually won't lose fights and things like that, and he even got his sister scoring different elements of fights so that it was always a draw. So a kick is worth this much, a punch is worth this much, drawing blood is worth that much.
Oh, wow.
It's worth Googling, and I will before we do Fast 8, I think it was, because Vin and Dwayne fell out on that film, and hence Vin is not in 9. We may find that some kind of media invention later on, but I don't think so. I think unless they're doing it deliberately for some sort of long play plotting thing for him to come back in 10, I think they genuinely fell out, and it was Dwayne being pissed off with Vin's ego and behaviour on set. And you've just got these testosterone-fueled men who can't lose races and can't lose fights now. So they have to be choreographed so they're pretty much a wash. And their fight is that, although it does finish with Dom on top, but I suppose he's more powerful as a producer at this point, Vin Diesel.
The only thing I will say to add to that in terms of the story, because Hobbs does make reference to Toretto as what he did when he was younger. Like sort of like beat a guy with a whatever it was. It was
Yeah.
Oh
well, we do get some father and son stuff. We get the prefiguring of them praying outside the house. Well, we got it in the first film, didn't we? But where the sort of family prayers came from, the going to church, and his love of family, and him and Brian have a sort of talk about fathers, don't they?
But so Hobbs makes a sort of like in terms of like, oh, he's just another criminal, and this kind of is like a throwback to that story of him beating a guy to death or beating a guy like, quite severely, where he's on top of him with top of Hobbs with the I don't know what we call it, like smart, and then doesn't do it.
It's a wrench or something.
Yeah. So there is an argument.
And he's at gunpoint. Mia is screaming at him to stop because he's someone's got a gun on him. One of Hobbs' team.
So it is like there is an argument to say this is a callback to that, and so it does.
It's not bad. It's just that little micro knowledge of the fact that all these things are choreographed so they all look good, which is going to get in the way of storytelling. If it hasn't already, then it will, because you have to have conflict, and conflict has winners and losers. But at this stage, Dwayne Johnson's only just joined the series. Vin Diesel's a producer on this film. He's certainly a producer on the next one. I think he's one on this as well. I don't know. What did you think of this, Becca? The fights, and it was a bit. What made me laugh about it, I must say, is how quickly Vin Diesel healed after this.
Yeah, I was amazed by his healing powers. I thought, wow, he's going to take that beating.
I know, he was bloody and bruised, and just after the gunfight that follows, he's nearly all right. And the next day, he's completely healed.
He's perfect. I think maybe he's from like the X-Men universe or something like that. Obviously, because the films are released concurrently. Maybe he's actually from the Marvel universe and is actually a superhero.
Yeah.
I would like to have his healing power. How does he do it? I think it's maybe where you got Vin Diesel and The Rock. I think it must be written in their contract somewhere that they must have a huge fight scene where there's a cut scene where they kiss at the end. But no, I mean it's pretty much very typical of their sort of careers. It's really I don't want to say this without being really but it's kind of very macho. They're quite like macho kind of men, aren't they? Definitely. It's very like testosterone fuel for sure. But I kind of think if you've got those two characters, they're both very similar, either same sort of size, and there's only one way. So to really kind of put aside any of the differences, and that's just literally let them have them at it essentially. But I've got very little problems with with this film. It's all, I mean, maybe a little bit too long, but as I say, the runtime, is adequate throughout. It's not kind of dragged in any way. But yeah, I'm just enjoying it up to here. Really, to be honest, I have a good old time with it.
You see the first scene of the film, well, not the first scene of the film, but when Dom steps onto the train earlier in the film, he's walking with his like muscles all fucking like flexed.
Oh, they look good.
They're both like this whenever like Vin and Dwayne encounter each other in these films, they're putting on that sort of macho pose that just reminds me of,
each other up.
It's like when Rocky walks to the center of the ring in Rocky 4, and he's got like his muscles tensed and flexing his pecs and stuff. It's all a little bit over the top. It's good fun, but yeah, they're basically under arrest. They're about to be taken back to America, so they head down the street in. Well, thankfully, Dwayne drives around in a bulletproof vehicle. But none of his
I'd like one of those.
None of his staff do, just him.
They just drive regular cars. Yeah.
Yeah. And the bulletproof one doesn't go in front. Right, you go first and soak up all the bullets, and then they can bounce off us what they've got left. But yeah, so they're attacked, aren't they? They're attacked by Reyes's men.
Yeah.
And basically his crew gets wiped out. Luke's. Hobbs.
Yeah.
Just as he's about to be killed, Dom to the rescue with the rest of them. So that's the beginning of
a beautiful friendship.
A beginning of a paramour. And Vince gets shot in this. We don't realise that he's driven away, but they get away. Basically, Elena and Hobbs have survived. That's it from his crew.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone from Dom's crew except Vince survives. Vince just says, "You must meet my son," to Dom, and then dies. And then they're back at the Then they're back at the warehouse or whatever it is.
Do you think they were setting up Vince to be like, to kind of like, oh, be suspicious as like, oh, he's going to betray him? There's always be that kind of suspicion around him, or think it wasn't like.
I was a bit confused. I think that there's not much wrong with this film, but I think that might be a dropped plot thread. Because he betrayed them, he was kicked out, he did them a favour, he was let back.
Yeah.
Then he dies, and you're suddenly like, is that meant to be kind of his punishment for what he's done? The sort of in-universe punishment is he redeemed himself, but he had to die. I don't know. I don't know. I think when he came back, I thought I would have thought, if I didn't remember this wasn't the case. Couldn't remember everything about this film, but I remembered that wasn't the case. I think I might have thought that, yes. I think it was set up to be something that was kind of dropped.
It's like, because the actor hasn't done much at all, so it could just be, I think it's one of his last films anyway.
Why does he not work now?
No, not, he's not done it. I don't think he's done much since then. Not in movies anyway. So it could just be like, I'll come back and do this one thing.
He's done one film since, and that was 2 years ago. I'm just looking. After this, he did 7 years later. He did a film called Action Point, which has got Johnny Knoxville in it.
Yeah.
And that is it. He hasn't even done anything on TV. So whether he's just stepped away from acting, or he does stage, or he's got something else going on in his life, I don't know.
Actor and musician, so maybe he's doing music stuff.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. So this was almost his goodbye, and he just obviously works when he feels like it. On this stuff, I mean, I don't mean he's lazy.
Well, if you don't need the money, I guess. Then it's just...
No, I guess so. Yeah. Okay. This is where I get bits of the film mixed up, because Vince has just died, and yet my recollection of this scene is they all sort of relax with a few beers, or is that before Luke came to get them? Because they're talking about what they're going to do with the money, and Tej is like, I'm going to open a garage, and Roman's going, your job and your dream is a regular job. And they have a beer, and Han flirts with Giselle.
Yeah.
I can't remember the order of things. But I know.
I think all that stuff's like just before that, because it's like some, because right now they're like,
it would be the wrong tone now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because right now they're saying like, well, obviously, because they were just about to go and do the job before Hobbs came in.
And at this point, it's now not about money. Dom is just totally like, he'll pay for that, and he'll pay by us still doing this. And the plan has now become much more smash and grab, because, well, the car thing never really worked, and while they were still planning it out, they've been arrested and stuff like that. So, and this is a bit that isn't quite plausible. Hobb says to him, "I'm in. I'll help you." Him and Elena.
I'll ride with you, yeah.
I'll ride with you. It's like, you're still an FBI agent, mate. But anyway, but his crew's been killed, so it's meant to be, revenge for him as well.
Yeah,
that's where this is playing to a mixed ability group, because like most people are going to watch that and go, not really, but it does have a kind of logic.
It does. I think it probably works best when you consider the fact that he's not working in his jurisdiction, so okay. He's working in a place where he knows is corrupt, because he got Elena because
that was the thing. Yeah, we skipped over that. The whole thing with him picking her was your past and your determination and her backstory, which we don't really need to go into unless you guys really want to, is that you're probably the only person I could pick who wouldn't be bought.
Yeah.
Because Reyes is all over that favela.
So in a way, it's like, kind of like, fine, I'll help these guys, screw over a wrong 'un. You know what I mean? It's probably like, okay. Yeah, fuck them. and then I'll just catch you afterwards.
There are some clues. There are some clues hiding in plain sight. We've already seen the police cars. We've already seen they bought a safe. They bought a safe to practice on. So we know there's two safes. But it was such a throwaway thing earlier in the film. You've forgotten about it.
Yeah.
So this film does actually plant all this stuff. We know they know the layout of the building. We know that they have vehicles. I mean, there were bits where I just thought in an alternative world that'll be credits. Because the next day when they do the smash and grab and they link the safe to the back of their cars, I'm just imagining them driving away, their bumpers ripping off and them going, oh, well, never mind. Just that'll do.
Yeah.
Didn't work. But yeah, they smash in, the two of them hook their cars up. That when they were saying the team, we need two amazing drivers with nerves of steel. Well, we know we're the best. We know we've got that. So yeah, they hook these two sort of quite nice matte finish cars up.
Yeah.
And I thought they'd resprayed police cars at this point, but never mind. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And they drive away. Yeah, they might have done. They rip the safe out of the wall. How plausible that is, I don't know. How plausible the speed they're able to go at with it is, I don't know. But this scene from now on is fantastic.
It's just pure carnage.
It's pure carnage. It reminded me in places of Terminator 3, where he went smashing through buildings in that opening sequence and stuff. But it's also the fact, Hobbs helps out by basically holding back any resistance to them stealing the safe from the building in the first place. That's their bit. And then they sort of follow on the basis that they're still going to have to arrest them at some point.
Yes. And
then the police are straight onto them on a race through Rio, basically, with the two of them tandem, effectively both hooked up to one massive safe behind them with $100 million, I'm assuming, in it. And every time they use it to smash things out the way, they split off to use it to mow down things. They sort of use it to balance themselves, and they use it to cause an immense amount of carnage in a cinematic car chase. And it's just great, and it's really long, and it reminded me a little bit in some respects. I talked about the slight sort of majesty to the formation driving in The Italian Job. This has got a bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this chase is meant to be like a homage to those classic Hollywood car chases. So you mentioned like The Italian Job, like Bullet, for example. I think this scene is meant to be, those really iconic car chases of classic Hollywood movies. I think this sequence especially is meant to be a real homage to that. So yeah, it's a good point that you bring that up, because I think that's exactly what it's meant to be.
And Mia's got something to do.
Yes.
Yeah, she's busy for once.
Yeah, she's on the convoy, sort of watching the city, basically. So they're watching out for heat. You need to turn there. But yeah, to your point, I think this whole sequence is really memorable. When I think of Fast Five, I think of like two cars trailing around a big safe, smashing into everything.
Yeah. The cars are identical. The cars are driven in a lovely sort of formation. They're all able to talk to each other. And just as you start thinking in this sequence about those of the crew that don't have something to do, you realise they do. Because Han, Tyrese, and all the rest of it are going to turn up in police cars to basically slam out the actual police and clear the path for them. And they head for a bridge, and then they realise they are... Oh, and Giselle is... What's Giselle doing?
She's driving the truck.
She's driving the low loader, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yes, there's a point where they clear a load of police, and then Mia says, you've got 10 clear seconds. Next thing we see, they're emerging from a very, very short underground bit, but very short. They barely leave our vision. But we find out later there's been a swap. The fake... again, the physics of this I'm not sure about, because now you've got an empty safe doing the exact same amount of damage. But yes, they've basically dragged it onto the back of a low loader. The two Spanish guys have unhooked them and hooked them back up to the new one, and then they've driven off and dragged that off the front.
So the heist, before, at this point, is already done.
It's already done, and now the audience doesn't know, and it's really intensifying because they're now on a bridge, and the police are catching them.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian says to Dom, "We're not going to get ahead of them." And he said, "I'm not, you are." And he unhooks. I thought he unhooked himself to start with. He unhooks Brian.
Yeah. Which
Brian,
doesn't make sense at the time, since you don't know, like, you still think the money's there. You're thinking, like you would think he'd, like, unhook himself and
you've given
let
up
Brian
the
go.
money, and it's only about freedom now, is it?
Yeah.
It is like, oh, that's disappointing. Then he turns and drives it, and you just think about the carnage and crime level. Cars are getting, people must be killed and decapitated and all sorts in this bit.
Well, you don't see any civilians cars.
No, but I mean, police cars are absolutely hitting this safe head on at speed, to the degree that people would come flying through the front window.
Oh god, yeah.
There's one bit where the top half of a car's like taken off. You think that would decapitate you.
Yeah.
There's carnage here, but he's basically dragging the police off Brian, and he's doing a really good job swinging this safe around, and sort of using it as a weapon against these cars ahead of him. And eventually he has to leap out because it goes off the edge slightly, and as it rebounds, it lifts his car. So the car's fucked. He's out. He's surrounded by, like, well, I think Hobbs and that have turned up. Hobbs and Elena are there. Just as he's about to be shot by the henchman.
Not Goldie.
Latino Goldie.
Brian shows up and shoots him.
Brian shows up and shoots him. I had to make a call, which is a call back to the start of the film, about taking the job in the first place. And Hobbs says to him, because he's won Hobbs' respect.
So Hobbs kills Ray's.
Yes.
Which I kind of liked how he did it. He just he kind of did it in almost like a John Wick way, where he like barely even looked at him. He just sort of like, yeah, fuck you.
Yeah, because
it's quite a cool moment, wasn't it?
Dom had already landed his car on him.
Yeah,
but, he survived that. And he tells them, "You've earned a 24-hour head start, and then I'm coming for you. But the money stays here."
Yeah.
So they drive off with their tails between their legs, having learnt their lesson about stealing being bad. Credits.
Yeah. Hobbs just found it kind of amusing that the money's gone now.
Well, no, he looks at the door and he's like, "Hang on a minute," because none of the security's on it. So he just opens the door and it's an empty, still kind of like bubble wrapped safe inside. And he just laughs. He just laughs at the idea. So Vince's share goes to his wife and his widow and kid. Giselle and Han are driving down the autobahn towards Berlin with her on his lap, not the other way around. He's giving it plenty. He's probably
That's the film we want to see.
He's probably going to finger her.
That's not the film we want to see.
I'd watch it.
Go ahead.
What else? Then I don't know where Brian and Dom are. I know they're in the Canaries at the start of the next film. They're in the Canary Islands. I don't know if that's where they are now. Did a screen grab come up of where they are?
I
don't think it did. The two Spanish guys go straight into a casino, and the implication is they lose their money immediately.
Which makes you think, oh, well done.
Brilliant, lovely stuff. Although, I don't know. But anyway, it's not made clear. But Dom is with Elena now. She's turned up, and obviously Brian and Mia are together, and they're sort of in a little sort of house on the beach. And it just made me laugh because the two women went off by themselves to sit and talk about knitting and cats and shit, while the two men drink a beer and talk about fast cars and shit. That was the other scene that made me laugh. It was just
a bit of a divide of the sexes, really, isn't it?
You go in there while the gentlemen have the smoking lounge. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Men this side, ladies that side.
Yeah. Women and kids go into your lounge. Man talk, slap on the ass.
Yeah, a little bit like that. I did wince a little bit.
And then they I've never seen Mia happy. It's because we're free. And then Brian looks at two cars and thinks, "Hang on, they're fast cars. We're fast drivers.
Oh yeah.
So let's have a race once and for all." Bit of shit talking, and then CGI, basically cars racing each other. As we go to credits, and the cars are perfectly evenly matched because contracts and shit.
I'd say probably that scene is probably the most. I mean, it's CGI heavy, but as well as CGI is
It's
probably.
though it's stylized because we're not.
Yeah, it's very heavily stylized, definitely. But apart from that, it looks good.
And they're sort of driving all over the world by the look of it. That's it. Fast 5. Done.
That was quick.
Fast 6 will pick up from more or less the same pace. We pick up from Fast 6 picks up with the race in what look like the same cars, although I can't confirm they're wearing the same stuff. But turns out they're heading to the hospital for the baby's birth. She is heavily pregnant at the end of this film, but I don't think it's the same race. But it obviously picks up very, very soon after. This is kind of a real hotspot for the series, though, because everybody's given something to do. I mean, compare Mia this week to Mia next week. You know, the first film I ever saw her in, I couldn't believe she was even a thing in the film because they just glossed over her.
Yeah, she's really ramped up, isn't it? I would say for a film that's so busy and it's got quite a big cast, for the most part, everybody has something to do. Like, I was kind of getting to halfway point and thinking, well, like the two main characters, you know, they're kind of not as prominent, but you know, they're obviously watching Man with a Golden Gun the other night, and it's like your turn will come. So I was like, well, their turn will come, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, for a film that's so populous, it has, you know, everybody gets a chance, everybody has something to do, and even some of the female characters who would traditionally be sidelined, unfortunately, they've got a job. So, well, hey.
But we'll see some of that next week, and we'll see plots go nowhere, like the aforementioned. Maybe I'll see the point of this when I rewatch it, but from memory, there's a subplot of he's got to go into prison to find something out, and when he comes out, Dom's like, "Whatever happened in there was for you." In other words, it was like, "Oh, what was the fucking point of that then?" This is you know, along with last week, we've hit a point where the plots are holding together coherently, the action's stronger, the characters are getting more thought about in how they're used, the interrelationships are at a high point, both in terms of the massive sexual tension between everybody, but also the fact that in later weeks the cast will get not unwieldy. They manage the size of the casts really well, but we're going to get somebody who's got the same skill set as Tej. And you think, well, if you were planning from scratch, you wouldn't have that. Whereas now they've all got their sort of defined roles. We've got comedic relief, we've got sort of brawn, we've got a bit of brains in the crew, we've got a bit of style, you know, and cool with Han and stuff. You know, this was a real high point. I wouldn't say it's downhill from here. It is, in that I think it's the strongest week, but we got a couple of decent weeks to come.
Yeah, I think these certainly next three films, I think, are sort of the high point in the series. They were kind of designed to be a bit of a trilogy within a series anyway.
Yeah.
But certainly
7 gets a bit compromised by what happens, because that should have come out a year after 6, and it didn't, which tells you that they knew what they wanted to do with these.
Exactly. Well, I think that these two films, kind of 5 and 6 for sure, are definitely kind of well, for me anyway, the high points in the series.
Yeah, and I don't expect anything we're going to get from now on to beat this. I think egos have got too large, the series has got a little bit too big, you know, and it's all gone to their heads a little bit. The films have got a bit too long, they've got a bit star fucking. Let's just cast like somebody fucking famous again, you know. Why not? It's a
big brand, you know, big series. Yeah, Helen Mirren wants to be in one, so why not?
I love
what's
Helen
wrong with
Mirren,
that?
but it's stunt casting. You don't fucking need it. It's just another scene you don't need in a film. So I think this is like the
gives people jobs, keeps you in work. Why not?
Yeah, but
I know, I'm only joking, don't worry.
This is the apex of the series before it all kind of went to their head. And so, yeah, this is about as good as it gets, folks. I really had a great time with this, and it stood up to a rewatch absolutely superbly. We haven't mentioned the post-credit sting actually has a little cameo from Eva Mendes.
Which I'm surprised didn't bring her back in any of this.
No, that's the point. I was just about to say she's still somewhat well known, and we don't see her again, to my recollection.
And it's kind of, cause, you know, after watching it, just you're kind of thinking, well, why is she and The Rock partnered up? Because that would make a bit more sense
for the next film, particularly as Rock doesn't have a partner in the next one in the same way.
Yeah,
it's because Elena's gone rogue. I mean, that she's with Dom at the end of this film and the start of the next one. Obviously, what's coming with the whole Letty thing will challenge that, but we'll talk about that next week. But yeah, no, that's it for me. I really, really like this film, unreservedly, not damning with faint praise, not patronising it. It's a well-plotted, smart, relatively smart for this series film. Everyone on good form. The casting that makes sense, plot characters that are given something to do, action that doesn't go too far but does nudge the limits, and yeah, really great.
Yeah, no, same here. I had fun with it. It's a solid, good action film. I think it's when it's in the territory of going in a bit more of like an all-star kind of like cast now, as we see in later films.
Yeah, they're becoming like, you get super groups occasionally, where you get like people from, you know, other famous bands meeting up and sort of producing an album together, and by and large, they're normally a bit less than the sum of their parts. And I think the Fast franchise goes a little bit like that.
As far as I know, I don't think Kurt Russell's in the new one, is he? Which I think I'm probably going to miss that element. I might be wrong. I might be in it, but
well, I mean, he's in 7 and 8, but he's in 7, and he's kind of wasted in that. There's a little bit of like little things would turn up to tease things and then not be used properly, and they just got a bit long and bloated. I still enjoy them. I'm not trying to say that like we've got a couple of decent ones to come and then they're terrible, but they've lost something since this point. Whether that's true of 9, we're not going to know for another year, because Justin Lin is back now, and Justin Lin's last effort before that is next week, which are the 2 we like. So
hopefully it'll be brought back to that high standard that we know and love.
Yeah, I mean, after that, it's James Wan does the 8th film. No, sorry, James Wan does the 7th film.
7th, yeah.
I'm sorry. And he does the 8th film was done by, was it F. Gary Gray?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Well, go and look at F. Gary Gray's filmography. I mean,
yes.
Justin Lin's a better filmmaker. F. Gary Gray made the Italian Job remake.
I think they'll bring their own kind of flavour to it, don't they? It's all kind of varied.
Black International. You know, so
exactly.
I mean, he made
Whereas like James Wan, I mean, I predominantly know him from like Saw and like sort of horror movies, for example. Yeah. So he kind of brings his own. I mean, I don't want to pigeonhole him as like a horror director. I mean, you guys probably know more about that than I do. I've only got as far as like third Saw film, and that's about it. I'm like, oh no. But as I say, he's got a certain aesthetic and a certain way of approaching films and filmmaking. So he brings the same flavour as does F. Gary Gray, and indeed Justin Lin for sure.
I mean, F. Gary Gray's like a really varied filmer. Like, you know, his first film
was
Friday.
Varied in what he does, but he's also varied in the end result.
He's Friday, Set It Off, Negotiator, or he did A Man Apart, which is
Vin Diesel.
Yeah, it's Vin Diesel as well, definitely. It's any kind of like really tough action movie. He's his ideal, really.
That was filmed before he became a star and released after, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was just after Triple X.
It was like 2003, but I'm pretty sure it was shot before Triple X.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I think so. I think it sat on the shelf for a while. Not because it's terrible or anything, but they cashed in on this. I might be getting confused with a different film. I wouldn't swear to it.
And then you got Be Cool, which is a completely different film. And
well, then... Be Cool is the sequel to Get Shorty.
Yeah.
And taking on board what Chris said about Get Shorty not standing up as well as you would think, it's still fair to say Be Cool is quite a weak follow-up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To say the least. Because it was the first thing Uma Thurman did after the Kill Bill films. And I remember seeing set photos of her with Travolta.
And like all the dancing again, like they did in Pulp Fiction.
There was still some buzz around her. And I thought, well, I like to Get Shorty. I hadn't seen it for a long time at that point, but I was looking forward to it.
Didn't hold up.
It wasn't great. I don't remember how bad it was, but I just remember it wasn't great.
And
funny thing, I managed to sell it recently for like my US copy on DVD for like 2p or something ridiculous like that, unfortunately, which is a shame.
And the best thing in that film was actually The Rock. He was
wasn't he a gay hitman?
You'd think it.
He was a gay bodyguard or something like that.
Well, he was famous.
He was definitely a gay character, and he was really campily, slightly 70s dressed, and he's great. The thing about The Rock is, I mean, he probably came to public consciousness outside of wrestling, that is. He had a short sort of part in the second Mummy film, and then they did a spin-off, The Scorpion King that he was in.
Yeah, I think it's kind of.
But like the next thing I recall him in, it won't be the next thing he did, but this is just a person's memories. The next thing I remember him in was Doom.
Yeah,
and he did a lot. He just did a lot of crap films, and I just thought, well, he's just going to be like a a B movie action star and that will be it.
Nope.
And I did not for years realise how good he was. I think Be Cool was the first thing I saw where I was like, oh, okay. And the quality control's been a bit up and down, but like he's just good in everything. You know how great an actor he is, I don't know, but he's a film star, and he's better with dialogue than a lot of these sort of muscle men that have been stars in the past. So
he's kind of an all-rounder. I think with you know his background in wrestling as well. He's kind of, you know, he's got the action, he's got the physicality, he's got screen presence, and you know he can pull off both terrible and incredible dialogue as well. So I think he's a good like all-rounder. And even seeing him voicing like Moana, for example, he can do kind of voice acting just as well. So yeah, he's kind of ticks all the boxes really.
I think as you said, like, you know, regardless of the film, as you would say, Dave, he's never the problem.
No, he's not. He's not. It's just there was a period in his career where every 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it might be, you'd see some left field choice, like his role in Be Cool, which is neither an action film nor is he playing to anything like type. And you go, oh, he's starting to make some interesting choices. I mean, and then there would be a brace of like either family friendly fare or just straightforward actioners. And I kept thinking, I'm not sure. He's always going to be a name because of wrestling, and he's better than most people at what he does. But I didn't think he was going to go quite as mainstream as this.
Well, it's funny because I think, at least at the start, you know, it's more kind of like general action stuff. This thing you think, well, yeah, I can understand him doing that.
Well, he played into what you'd expect an ex-wrestler to do in the acting business.
Well, it's funny because I think they were all produced by WWF. They all had they were like Scorpion King, Run Down, Rocking Tour, were all like WWE production.
I didn't know that.
I'm not sure if Grinding Gang is, just looking at it. But outside of that, Doom might have been to a degree, I don't know. But outside of that, you know, I mean, even in Doom, he played the bad guy, which is kind of like...
I've not seen it. I've avoided it because it just seemed like a very weak adaptation. I say, I'm not sat here going he was in Doom, which was shit. I'm saying he was in Doom, which was an uninspiring choice.
I mean, Doom's not very good, but...
And actually, there was a couple of times normally I like to make my own opinions, but you know me well enough. I think that, all right, I'll surprise you occasionally, but if you see something that I won't like, you tend to say to me, I don't think you'd like that. And Doom was one you were telling me was shit. And I just thought, well, Chris knows me. If he's telling me it's crap, I won't like it. So I didn't bother.
I mean, I would say he's probably the best thing in it because his character does have like it's the way the film takes. It's like he's like the leader of the group kind of thing, and he ends up sort of like getting infected and becomes essentially like the main bad at the end. So it's a bit of his role in it's probably the best thing in it because it kind of starts in one place and ends in another.
He's such a confident screen presence. I mean, he's so confident. I mean, if you look at other muscle-bound big stars, sort of Arnie's and Sly, Arnie has the screen presence. He definitely has the screen presence, but he's not a great dialogue producer because he sounds like Total Wolf. You know, he's just very monotone. I like him a lot more than I used to like him, and I respect what he's achieved in life, but he's got limits. And Sylvester Stallone, obviously, effectively, there was an accident when he was born, so one side of his face is wonky and his voice can be a little bit affected as a result. So they're two not wildly expressive actors for all their talents, and Stallone's been fantastic in a number of things. But I look at Dwayne Johnson and just go, you can actually do most things. I hope as you get older you will push yourself and not just play agent, retired cop, action hero or whatever. He sort of has in the Jumanji films because he's playing a child in a man's body. But I wonder how he would do with more serious fare.
Yeah, I think it tends to sort of like go that way. You know, once you have like, once you sort of hit the stride, you know, like McConaughey's like you're always doing the rom-com kind of thing, and then once you know that kind of like he reached its peak, you start going, oh well, I'll start taking more chances now. Which I can see him doing because he's done it before as well. He's done it at the start. I mean, Christ, he was in Southland Tales for fuck's sake.
Yeah, Richard Kelly's follow up to Donnie Darko.
Which if you've not seen Southland Tales, it's it's a thing. But yeah,
it's the difficult second album. And everyone signed on it on the basis that oh, he did Donnie Darko. What an interesting filmmaker.
Yeah.
Always let them get their second out of the way first. It might be Pulp Fiction, but it might not.
I don't think I've seen it, so I'll give it a wide berth.
I mean, I don't love Donnie Darko as much as most people do, but I do at least think it was a very interesting piece of work. Southland Tales plays very much self-indulgent. It's a guy who's just had some critical acclaim, and it's gone to his head. It's a bit like everyone wanted to work with Josh Trank after Chronicle, and they're less inclined to now, sort of thing. But he was in that. Yes, he was in Southland Tales.
He's only done the box, and that's it, isn't it? Since.
Oh, Richard Kelly.
Yeah.
Is it Richard Kelly?
Yeah.
Is that his name? Looking him up. The Box was a film with wasn't that Cameron Diaz?
Yeah.
It was a box where you could. It's an intriguing idea. I never saw it.
Yeah, it's worth a watch. As a bit of a creepy vibe. It's more straight. It's still weird, but it's not like as out there.
Yeah. And he did. Oh, he was a writer on Domino.
Yes.
It was a Tony Scott film, which I avoided because it was
Tony Scott.
I don't need to dig on the guy because he's got a lot of fans, but by then I'd made my decisions on him, so I didn't really bother. I only went to see Unstoppable because I got a freebie. I got free tickets to that, so I was like, yeah, I'll watch it. I don't hate him that much. I'm just not a fan who really wants to spend money in that direction. So I did go and see Unstoppable, but I didn't see Domino. I remember I used to listen to radio in the morning back then, and the radio adverts for "I'm Domino Harvey" were on all the time.
I'm Domino.
They
Really?
were awful. And Keira Knightley's done some good stuff. I don't think she's a bad actress, and I don't think Keira Knightley was ever fair.
Okay.
But she doesn't have the most expressive voice for a radio advert. So,
No, she was a bit, I'm Domino, and it's like, oh, Christ.
My name is Domino Harvey. It was just like, I skipped it.
And
then the reviews came out, and it was like dead on arrival. So, but yes, Richard Kelly is only 45 now. He made it quite young. So Donnie Darko was 26 when Donnie Darko came out. So that's quite impressive to say the least. Yeah, when you think when it was coming out at Sundance and stuff, he would have been 25 filming that. So yeah, but his career's obviously not flowered in the same way. Jake Gyllenhaal's has, to be fair. Patrick Swayze was in that. I forgot.
Such a good cast.
Yeah, so I wouldn't shortlist him to do a Fast and Furious film though. Richard Kelly. I'm pleased Lynn is back, and this is why. I mean, I don't love Tokyo Drift, and I don't love 4, but certainly the highest parts of this series had his imprint.
What do you think the chances are that John Cena is going to turn out to be end up being a goodie at the end?
Oh, that's a question.
Isn't he Vin's brother?
Yeah.
Unmentioned in 8 films. That's what I mean. It's like a soap. It is like, it used to happen in like Neighbours and stuff. Someone would ring the doorbell, they'd answer it, and they'd go, "Hi, I'm whoever," and it would turn out to be a long lost relative, and they were let in and joined the family immediately. So I don't know. I don't know with John Cena.
The thing I love about soaps is you got like sort of like family, like sons and daughters and that who've been like for 10 years, and then they go off somewhere and is never mentioned again.
Yeah, not even talked about. Not even I got a postcard. Not even a scene starts and they're just coming off the phone to one of them.
Or not even just like casually visiting as you would do. Like your mum and dad, like every year or so, you would at least visit. But no.
Yeah, and then I love like their existing family get married on the show and they don't come to the wedding. Like half the families don't turn up to the wedding, and the best kept man can't make it, so it's got to be whoever they're drinking with in the pub at that time. Yeah, this is going to go a little silly as we go forward, and there's bits in the timeline that just won't make sense. And good guys become bad guys become good guys. I'm hearing Han is alive in Fast 9, and it's like, okay, even Letty. I mean, we saw fucking Letty die. But anyway, but we're in a good place at this point. Anything else to add on the film?
No, I mean, I don't know a lot, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think that's why we're running out of material, Chris. We don't know anything. Do we just try and style it out and I edit this a bit out and the audience can just think we know stuff, or should we address the elephant in the room and respect our audience?
Well, I think we've, how many episodes we've done now? Like
178.
I mean, I think we always address that. That's 178 elephants we've addressed every episode. So.
Plus about 7 non-canon episodes. So yeah, around the 185 mark, and we've been clueless every week. I mean, if we carry on,
you've done quite well, quite frankly.
I think if we carry on for the same again, you can have a recording of us clueless for every day of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, when we started this, I actually used to do my research and stuff, Chris. I don't know when I got so lazy that I'd come into this stuff knowing nothing.
Well, it's a good job we got Becca to give us, fun facts to inform everyone.
What I find quite disturbing is that we forget we've got this resource in Becca every week, because we seem to talk for quite a long time about how do we inform ourselves before you remind me Becca exists and is really knowledgeable.
That's a load of rubbish.
Oh.
Shh.
We're
trying to... sorry, that was on me, wasn't it?
Oh, sorry.
Becca.
Hello.
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 Chris and I...
Yes, I think we covered most of it. But yeah, obviously...
All that fucking build up. Nothing.
We covered most of it. But no, I'd just like to take a moment to say thank you to Chris for giving me the Blu-rays for these next 2 films. Obviously with the extras, you get quite a lot of extras on the Blu, but obviously a few years out of date now, so the whole Blue what was it, like Pocket app that you used to be able to get and Video Live and all that kind of stuff, hideously defunct. So I thought, oh yes, there'll be a gold mine of extras for me to mine. No, none. So
sorry,
but no, thank you anyway for making this film viewing possible. So
you're welcome. I mean,
yeah, brilliant.
You're lucky I didn't sell them.
In previous weeks, she was just watching the fucking nicked copy we gave her.
No.
Oh shit, it's all there, wasn't it? Sorry, Becca.
Anyway, yeah, I've managed to find out from the Tinterwebs 5 useless facts, which we've already discussed. So yeah, Fast 5 is actually a film of firsts. This is the first. I've written F&F, which is a clothing brand, so I'll try not to say that.
That's Tesco's clothing.
I know.
Brand.
It's quite embarrassing that you know that.
Yeah.
I can't be asked. I can't. I was
we're past the era of Woolworths jeans.
Oh my god, Ladybird! Remember those?
No, what was that?
I think that was Woolworths. Children's clothing, I think. I was thinking shoes as well, perhaps.
I'd be worried if I did know children's clothing, to be fair.
You're of a certain age when. Yeah, so it's a film of first. It's the first film in the series to be over 2 hours, and the first Fast and Furious film to be shot in IMAX. Fun fact number 2, the lovingly amazing Don vs Hobbs fight scene took over a week to shoot. Fun fact number 3.
That was them talking to their lawyers for several hours.
That's what dragged it out so long. They're like, right, no, this is what I want.
You hit me there, and I don't want that. What do we do?
I'm going to punch you here, you're going to punch me there.
It's actually a pretty decent fight. Got that meta knowledge.
As kind of fight scenes go, it's quite visceral, and you do kind of feel, I winced a few times, and you sort of feel it, It's one of those epic fight scenes where you do kind of really feel the impact of the punches. In that way that you do. It's like that fight scene at the end of on the train in Spectre when Bond really does get kicked out of him. So yeah, fun fact number 3, Fast 5, obviously, as we discussed during the course of the action, it was actually part of the trilogy, and 5 and 6 were written, as kind of like a mini, series within the series. So that's kind of why it does have that kind of that 3-parter style arc to it, which obviously falls away towards the end. Fun fact number 4.
Circumstances. I think we'll have to try to be kind to 7 because of circumstances.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
But I think we'll just have to look, as we have done with some other lesser films in the series. We'll have to kind of look around the circumstances of its production, which resulted in the film that we eventually got. Fun fact number 4: oh dear, my earring just fell out. Oh.
Okay, but that's fact 4.
That's fact 4. Malfunction of the wardrobe. The climax of the film is Brian Hobbs stealing a bank vault, which I think is pretty epic, and dragging it through the streets of Rio. Obviously, this didn't really happen. The stunt team achieved this effect with obviously real vaults, but pull it on the giant kind of truck, like a sort of bed truck, rather than actual cars. So that kind of achieved that illusion, which I think was pretty cool. And obviously, fun fact number 5 is, as we mentioned, she didn't apparently, reading to interviews and reports, she didn't realise that her character survived until she saw the end credits. So how about that being kept in the dark? And she was actually in the film.
Well, she technically wasn't. She was.
Well, no, she kind of wasn't, but she was. She didn't really find out, even though she'd been in the franchise. She didn't find out until like the rest of us.
Can you imagine like sort of leading with that tease, and then like sort of them bringing her and going like,
and then talks with the actress, breaks down immediately.
Yes, no, I don't want to.
Nah, it's all right.
If you hadn't already done the deal, Christ, you could drive hell of a bargain, couldn't you?
Yeah, I'll do this. This isn't it. So I've got to pay this much.
Chris, when you write the show notes, can you write in that Becca has a wardrobe malfunction, because everyone will listen.
They'll go, oh, what's that?
And watch the YouTube version, going, oh, what's that? No.
Oh, what's that? Too late.
Yeah. We know it's an earring falling out, but they're going to get like 2 hours into the show before they realise that we didn't just flash up a picture of some 40 bits.
Dave has a wardrobe malfunction.
Yeah, but there isn't like an earring fallout, like an innuendo for something else.
No.
I don't think so, is it?
Not as far as I know. No,
it could be.
One of us will have our knob fall out. Which one will it be? Join us next.
That's After Dark. After Dark.
I could put that on the trailer. Just like hinting, it won't only because it won't only be a trailer for this show. Then it'll be a trailer for next week.
Sexy show.
Because people are like, well, hang on, there must be a wardrobe malfunction this week because they're referring to one next week.
Yeah.
It's going to be your penises.
Keep your ears peeled.
Chris has a malfunction.
That's our motto. Keep your ears peeled for penis.
There's all the alliteration and things that are fun to say.
What the fuck are we talking about?
I'll take my earrings out next time. Gosh.
Becca has an earring fallout, and we've extrapolated from that. Keep your ears peeled for penis.
Literally, from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
How did you get from point A to point B?
I honestly don't know what happened.
Via point Z? Oh my gosh.
I was about to say I'm wondering if I've had a stroke, but you might misunderstand.
I was saying, have you? Are you okay?
I've definitely not had a stroke.
Has your face fallen on one side?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Not that kind of stroke, Becca.
No. Can you raise one arm?
Yeah, I only need to raise one
All
arm.
the other is doing, you know what? No, in serious. No.
No, all this bit of stuff is coming on.
Yeah. Bit stiffness in the shoulder, yes.
Yes, slight stiffness coming on in the shoulder.
Aye, he means his cock.
Badly dubbed, George.
Badly dubbed, George. Yeah.
Yeah, he's basically says that line without moving his lips.
I watched the first series last week of the Blackadder.
Oh my god, I've not seen that for ages.
There was the episode, The Queen of Spain's Beard, which he had to marry Miriam Margolyes or whatever it was.
Oh gosh.
But Jim Broadbent was her, because she was Spanish, and Jim Broadbent played her translator. And there's a bit where they send Baldrick to fuck her, so she's not a virgin.
Yeah.
And it just cuts to the dark, and she starts like moaning and talking and like making sex noises, and he's translating them. He's actually in when they're having sex, translating them. And I'm just wondering if George Baker had to attend when James Bond had sex. The real Hilary Bray.
That's how he did it.
It's not Hilary Bray in the book.
No.
Although Hilary Bray is in the book.
Well, if Wexford turns up.
Wexford. I never watched an episode of that. Was it any good?
Oh, it was quite good. I enjoyed the books a lot better, but obviously he was known for playing Wexford as well.
Oh, there you go. What a show. Minge, boobs, penis, Wexford. I've just
That's
realised.
the trajectory of our show.
I've oversold it because Binge didn't get mentioned. It has now, though. So
Well, you took that box, didn't you?
I haven't ticked any boxes for a while, sadly. Anyway.
Oh, dear.
As for social media, you can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter on similar. I'll say that again. You can find me on Twitter at
Twitter on
yeah. You can find me on you can find me on Twitter at cinematronics.co.uk. Well, you can't find me. You can
fucking hell.
Well, you can, but
you cannot find him on Twitter at cinematronics.co.uk.
No,
you can find me at Cinematronics on Twitter, and you can find all the old episodes at cinematronics.co.uk.
Good old Chris, living his life a quarter of an inch of a mile.
Well, don't worry, because next week we get to have the really infinitely long runway, don't we? So there'll be
That's brilliant. I'm
sure there'll be an epic
I'm
factage
gonna
about
have to
that.
do some maths on that next week.
Yeah, how long is it?
Well, we're going to have to guess a speed, because I think planes are normally doing a couple 100 miles an hour when they take off, but let's work on 100 miles an hour and then just time the scene. I've got a feeling the runway on that basis is like over 20 miles long.
It is crazy.
It is. Particularly as they go on for quite a while after a bit where like Dom's no longer on the plane or something. And Dom is still only about 20 yards away. That scene is like, it's the start. It's a lot of fun, but it's not.
It does go a bit silly.
It goes a bit silly.
Anyway. It's too silly.
So what about us on Twitter and you on Twitter, Becca?
Yes, you can follow us on Twitter at Expect Us to Talk, and the same on Facebook if you type in Do You Expect Us to Talk. You can also, I made a list, you can also find us obviously on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, Stitcher and Podbean. That's as far as I've got so far. And don't forget, wherever you draw us, you can find us wherever you normally draw your podcast from. Don't forget to rate us, review us, to like us and share us. Thank you.
Draw us like one of your French girls.
Like as wherever you find your podcast, whichever platform you go to, don't forget to rate, review, like us and share us on there. I'm just going to borrow that from another podcast, so thank you.
Keep your ears peeled for penis.
That'll be a new catchphrase for us, I think.
Your words, not mine.
I don't know where that came from. I don't even know what it means.
I think we're getting further and further from a film podcast, which we never were to begin with. So.
We've just talked about a film for 2 hours.
I know, but that doesn't count.
Oh, fair enough. Obviously, the real meat was at the end, literally and figuratively.
I was going to say.
Maybe we should just basically sort of like randomly slip penis into our reviews and just sort of see.
I would love to Well, I don't want to randomly slip penis in because I don't know what I'd be randomly
It's hidden.
But yeah, but you can sort of like, listeners can tell us like where they heard it. It could be like,
It'll be a new game.
yes,
Drop us an email telling us at what time.
keep your ears peeled for penis. There you are.
What's the time?
Right, so what you're saying is, because if it was an hour and 50 into the show, they're all going to say an hour and 50 in the show. What you're getting at is they say, I was in the fruit and veg aisle in Aldi when I heard you talk about penises.
Yeah, the more inventive, the better.
Yes.
The more mundane place
I
you're
was
in.
only at the deli when Becca's tits got mentioned.
I mean, Chris's Fruity Corner just took a new meaning now, hasn't it?
It really has.
Yes. If the film provides us with fruit, you'll be the first to know, listeners. But it's been quite poor in that regard, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've not spotted much fruit, to be honest with you.
No, we have to get back on the fruit spotting train.
But again, what's he going to spot it in? I'm just hoping Spider-Man gets his 5 a day and rigs and Murtaugh. And, I don't know, do the apes eat a lot of bananas and stuff? I don't know.
Probably not. No, they shun.
Yeah. It's quite
When they try to
difficult
dominate mankind, they're like, no.
No, I'm not eating fruit. They don't order pizzas in, though, so they must be eating something.
to misquote the title of that famous book, bananas are not the only fruit.
No, they're not. Oranges are not the only. It's a TV show with Charlotte Coleman in it. Had a load of lesbian action in it. I think I missed the point of the film, to be honest with you, because I think it was much more about social themes and growing up.
You
But
probably weren't the target demo.
I was 13, to be honest. So I was just like, look at that. Anyway,
Covering all the bases.
I'll leave you there, listeners. Which means, Becca.
Do you expect to talk or return with our review of Fast and Furious 6?